Hello, everybody. Welcome to the program. Welcome. We are a bit late, a couple of minutes late, but that happens. We are here with Chapelmon and myself, and we're gonna be discussing the news such as they are, and also we are going to be tackling. I'm thinking of talking about one of our favorite games we talk about once in a while because I haven't had these discussions with other people in some other places. So the idea of spiritual successors and sequels has sort of come up and said, well, what if we talk about one of our favorite games, and we can talk about other games in this venue, but Kingdoms of Amalur was a game that I was really thinking about. Um, just not to beat up on the same dead horse that we always do, in Bioware. And thinking, I mean, I'm aware that the uh, take not take two, but THQ Nordic has the rights for it, but it's still up in the air whether they're going to do anything about it. So if they're going to
Yeah.
work on a sequel for Kingdoms of Amalur, maybe we have some tips for them. But before we do that, again, hi to everybody. And if I look like I'm in low spirits, it's discussing something off camera, which I don't want to trouble you guys with. It's not good, but it is what it is. So we're gonna focus on the news first, see if we can get through that, and then we continue and talk about not such good things. This one that came up on my screen earlier yesterday, I believe, and that is the situation with Apex Legends. According to PC Gamer, Apex Legends producer calls players, and I'm quoting from the article, asshats and dicks in heated Reddit thread.
Mm.
Uh, and essentially, what was happening, they were discussing, and there's been some controversy as it is with microtransactions, the dog, and this and that, and other Fortnite and some other games. And this was a Reddit thread, right? It's like, oh, we're discussing the new implementation of new microtransactions, and it got heated as several, players, I suppose, accused the company of being money grubbing people, right? As one is wont to do when dealing with companies that use microtransactions as their main source of income. And I think what's notable here is that everybody basically lost it, right? You have a player base that's using Reddit to unload on on the company, and then you have the developers sort of turn around like, no, we're not. That's not who we are. Why are you attacking us, and why are you being so toxic? For example,
Yeah.
uh,
Mm.
a quote is, I'm going to quote a part. I've been in the industry long enough to remember that when players wearing complete asshats to developers, and it was pretty neat. I forged a bunch of long-lasting relationship with from back then. He said in one comment, "Would be awesome to get back there and not engaging toxic people or asking how high when a mob screams jump is hopefully a start."
Yeah.
This is from executive producer at Respawn, Drew McCoy. Um, I can understand where he's coming from. You get exasperated, stuff like that. It's like, well, I'm giving you a free game, stuff like that. And he goes into talking about these reloaders because only a small percentage of people actually buy the microtransactions, which is what makes the game viable. Well, here's the thing. First of all, you created a game which was free to play.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, part of that formula is that you're going to have microtransactions. That's one of the reasons why I have problems with microtransactions, right? It's if you wanted to just have a game, just sell it to me, right? But you can't then turn around like, oh, we give you a free game. I don't know what you're complaining about. It's like, well,
Yeah.
you still get to complain about it. And on the other
Yeah.
side,
'Cause
of course,
I.
you have the people just not being very polite and thinking that they just can lambast whoever they're talking to. Yeah,
Yeah. Actually, I think the one of the the better responses to that post was something about like I remember a time where game developers didn't charge $135 for a skin.
yeah. So there's a lot to go around, right? And I think this is, again, I think it's showing something that we've been talking about for a long time in this program, and it's something that I basically feared was going to happen, is that people are getting tired of the sort of microtransaction driven um, economy. Yes, people are still spending money, but now you start having people say, okay, some of this stuff is just ridiculous, and we're going to complain about it. They don't do it in the best way possible. You know, I mean, if you're gonna say somebody is a greedy fuck, just make a video on YouTube and call them a greedy fuck. You don't have to just say to their faces, virtually speaking, on Reddit. That's just gonna be things make it's gonna make things antagonistic, and then you have a situation where both sides are name calling each other, and not that, right? And also, whether we like it or not, you're supposed to be a professional, and when you go into situations like this, you're supposed to behave like a professional. So if you don't, then you're the one who comes out as worse for wear. So
Hmm.
it's
Yeah, that's the thing when people can complain about like, oh, I can't defend myself. No, it's not that you can't defend yourself, it's that you got to be very professional about it when you do.
mm-hmm.
It's like you have to choose your words wisely.
And this was a case of where that did not happen. I feel. I mean, you are at a disadvantage because you're supposed to be the adult in the room, right? Well, everybody's supposed to be the adult in the room. That's absolutely clear. But and this is something that the subreddit will put into subreddit community. While we have a right to be upset, we cannot let a few bad apples replies warrant chopping down the whole tree. What I'm saying is we need to be civil and not resort to full on toxicity. The store and its price 100% needs work and tweaking. Well, let's not act like all respawn is evil here. I feel like, and there's something similar to what happened with Epic as well. There's a follow up on Kotaku, which sort of links to this. Now, game developers have to ask fans not to harass them over the Epic Store.
Hmm.
Uh, One of the things, and this is quoting the first article. Kelly, thank you for following and welcome to the channel. Uh,
Hey.
Quoting the first paragraph out of Kotaku, one of the easiest bits of news in Mr. Monday's Gamescom opening night that was talking away an ad for Epic Game Store. Simple Cecil revealed to showcase a number of games exclusive to controversial digital PC game storefront, including a upcoming indie that previously wasn't in Epic's roster, Oddworld Soulstorm. Oddworld being a very old, you know, franchise. Shortly after, Oddworld creator Lauren Lanning posted a message via Oddworld Twitter account. A message from Lauren. I would like to address the entire Oddworld community, old and new. We have supported us in anticipation for years, and we thank you. Uh, would like to provide the reasoning why we went to bring in PC version of Soulstorm to the Epic Game Store exclusively because you deserve to know. Uh, so he noted that Soulstorm had previously been 100% self-financed, but to create a version of a Soulstorm we want when you serve need additional financial assistance. Again,
Hmm.
money is required to make this,
Yeah.
and here's the situation, right? And this is also Jim Sterling brought on one of his videos, and I think it was a Monday. There comes a point where, and this is where you start to. That's the problem, right? When you start harassing people, I said the phrase that there comes a point where you are saying nothing about the other person, and you're saying everything about yourself.
Hmm.
Whether you feel justified or not in your anger, there are ways and there's ways. And I know that sounds like policing people, but let's talk about being effective, communicating effective. If I open my mouth and just say a stream of swears in an angry tone, I may be justified in saying that, but the other person's gonna go, you're just attacking me. They're gonna go in
Hmm.
defensive mode or counter-offensive mode, and we're gonna either somebody's gonna shut down, and I'm not gonna get anything, so my words are just gonna bounce back. They're just gonna like peace out and leave, or we're gonna be shouting at each other, and nothing is being said, right? I mean, that's what sarcasm is for, folks. You want to get a couple of digs in, you gotta be smarter about it. But you don't have to do that. And there's something, and one of the things he brought about is that there are people who are so incensed about the whole Epic Store thing that they're, by their very nature, the way they're talking, make it very difficult for genuine criticism to get through, right? Because it can be lumped. Oh, you're talking about the Epic Store. Oh, you must be one of those troglodytes. So it's always, you know, bitching about it. Oh, you want to talk about microtransactions. Oh, you must be one of those haters that just, who doesn't believe that, businesses are meant to make to do, make money. and it becomes a problem with itself, and also becomes that that defense is like, well, I don't have to listen to you because clearly you're one of those people who are unreasonable, and I don't have to listen to you, so I can dismiss you when one wave of the hand, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you were about to say something. I interrupted you.
Oh no. So the whole the whole thing with like when it comes to like the Epic exclusive store, it's like I think people are allowed to be dissatisfied and voice their criticism, and obviously you need to be civil about it. And that doesn't mean you can't, I guess, like swear. I know a lot of people think like, oh, you're using potty mouth, therefore,
Mm-hmm.
well, not necessarily. If you use swear words correctly, that's fine. But like, it's when you start personally attacking people. Oh, you must be pieces of garbage because you're going up at exclusives. Like, no, that doesn't. That doesn't. Um, that's not like a very good argument.
Mm-hmm.
That's nothing. That's just a personal attack. I know, a lot of it was, especially like the most recent big one was the Ooblets one,
Mm-hmm.
where the people got the developers got a lot of like death threats and abuse and harassment, which is completely non-acceptable. Even if they kind of brought it upon themselves by the way they went through the announcement, just everything we've seen when it comes to them interacting with the people that have been funding them up to that point, their Patreons, I don't think they were Kickstarted. I think they were just a pure Patreon funded game. So it's I mean, a lot of that was they kind of went about it the wrong way, and I guess in a way you could sort of see that they kind of brought it upon themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They brought the criticism upon themselves. That doesn't mean they brought the personal attacks themselves. And I don't think personally attacking anyone and making threats brings any kind of nuance to the discussion. And you're definitely not going to sway developers in any sort of way to like not do that.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, death threats, doxing, that those cross all kinds of lines. You're like, what are you doing? Right? This video games, and that's another thing is that again, people say they want to support studios and stuff like that because that's the other side of this. You're not hurting the corporation. Take Two Interactive is not getting hurt, or Take Two, or Rockstar, or
Even Epic.
EA, Epic. They're not getting hurt. Who's on the front line of this? The people who want to make a game, and because Epic knows how to play the system, and knows there's a lot of indie developers who otherwise would not even get to make the game. The first was like, well, we got oodles of cash here. You just have to sign on the dotted line, right? And I think that's one of the points that Jim was making, right? So not, I don't want to take credit for someone else's arguments. I just agree with it. And it's like,
And
yeah, go
I
ahead.
can't I can't blame them either for wanting to take the money because like do you it's such a risk investing in your work and to potentially put everything you have, your very livelihood into a passion project and then it not be successful, not pay off, not find the right audience or what have you, or maybe it's not even that great. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for various reasons that a, a project can fail. And to have that safety net to where like, hey, like if you just let us sell your product and us alone, we will guarantee you that you will not break, you will not lose your livelihood, you will not freaking go become destitute.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it finds an audience or not, I can't blame anyone for taking the deal.
I mean, it's like Epic is doing a sort of a lighter version of a big corporation like EA buying up a studio, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
why do the people in that studio, especially the bosses, take the deal? It's like, well, they're giving me X tens of millions of dollars, $100 million, and implicit in that deal is that they're going to keep paying to keep the lights on as
yeah.
long as the corporation does this, right? Which kind
It
of reminds me of, now that I think about it, the whole line of Mass Effect and Saren. Isn't it better to, as to cooperate? Now that I think it,
with our robot overlords that are gonna kick our ass anyways.
yeah, now that I put it into perspective, it's like, oh, they're working with Microsoft just and this make this game, but probably they were already being already bought.
very
They already
yeah.
have been bought by Riccatello at this point, and he eventually rejoined EA. So,
Yeah.
oh boy, now that just
So,
brings a lot of perspective.
actually, I was gonna bring it to the other piece of a story today that Sony bought out Insomniac Studios, which
Hmm.
is they I wouldn't say they've been a second party kind of mostly a second party developer for Sony.
Hmm.
They I think most of their games have always been an exclusive for Sony consoles, and that's sort of what Epic is doing. I mean, it's sort of no different than um and actually I was reminded by in a different video yesterday. It's no different than what a lot of console manufacturers do in terms of they they don't buy out studios, they do buy exclusive games from, I guess, indie studios or studios that just are their own thing. Sony and Examiac are no, or one. Rare and Nintendo in the old days, there were one. They had, I believe I heard they had a stake in them.
Hmm.
They were like a 25% investor, but they didn't outright own them completely. Well, there's one I was just thinking about, like Nintendo more recently with a Bayonetta 2. I mean, Platinum Games, they don't own Platinum Games, but they bought uh Bayonetta 2, and I think what is there a Bayonetta 3 coming out too? Is there?
Everybody's hoping for it. I played the original. I want to see if they release Bayonetta 2 for PC because I actually enjoyed Bayonetta. There's some criticism of it, but it was fun. It was good. I liked it.
Yeah. So it's I mean it's sort of it's I can kind of see parallels to what Epic exclusive is, except I think that the issue is that it's not so much that I guess the difference is it's not that like Sony's going to these studios like, hey, we want you to make a game for us. And here's some money.
Hmm.
I don't think I think that's where the difference is. At least that's what I might be wrong. Maybe that's how second party games work. It's like, here's some money, make a game
Well,
for
many times that's what happens. I mean, that's what happened with Bayonetta. There was like, they
yeah.
couldn't make Bayonetta 2, and Nintendo say, "Hey, we'll make it for you because we have the Wii U and we need games on the Wii U. So here's some money, right?" I think what happens is doing is, I mean, essentially they're setting up a console-like monopoly in the PC space, and
Yeah,
people know that, and they're pushing back. They're like, "We have all
and of
this
course the
stuff, right?"
difference is that it's like a developer has the game mostly complete, and they're like, hey, here's some money. We didn't put any risk into it or in terms of developing it and stuff. We're just willing to take the risk to sell it,
Hmm.
which has it's still risky, but it's still a lot less risk than giving some no name studio some money and give me a product that maybe might never materialize. Like, hey, you're kind of close to finishing that, and it looks releasable. Here's some money. We'll sort of own it, kind of.
And I think Epic would also solve a lot of its problems if it just invested a little bit of that money into making the Epic Store more friendly, more approachable. Because here's the thing: yes, it took a long time for Steam to grow into what it is, but now you go to Steam and it is that quote unquote ecosystem that everybody dreams about. Once you're in Steam, you don't want to really get out. Cause, I want to
Yeah,
press the button. There's a
I,
trailer here. There's a thing. I want to. Just being on Steam is a bit of an experience that took them
yeah.
years to
It's
develop.
like Jim's analogy in his most recent video. I love that. It's like if I were to release a console now in present day and not I can't not release it with an HDMI port and then point to like the Sega Genesis or any old consoles like, well, this is my first console and like the Sega Genesis didn't have an HDMI port, therefore why should I have to?
Yeah. They would smooth out because the thing about Steam is, and one reason why it still has this chokehold on the industry, it's convenience. You go to Steam, the Steam sale. I last time I bought like 6 games, like for $10 or less, $20 or less each. Like buy, and it was like, oh, I have them on my library. I just go there, I download them when I want to. I download them. It's the convenient. I don't like, to be honest. I prefer GOG over Steam. because COG is over better. But the combination of the fact that they have a huge library and are more or less convenient is I'm still waiting for Galaxy to drop so I can have all my put all my stuff under one banner and use your GOG straight up. That's what I plan.
Hmm.
That's my plan. But it's convenience as well as name recognition and know that you're gonna get these games, right? Um, and so it's not gonna eliminate all the criticism, and I do not like what Epic is doing, trying to sort of became the new Steam, the new monopoly. Um, but there you have it. And if you don't do it right, you're just giving ammunition to the very people that you're supposed to be the ultimate, sort of the ultimate problem. Now, moving to other news, and this I first heard this because I started seeing it on my Twitter feed yesterday, under news about people being fired in Game Informer. But the news is bigger. GameStop lays over 100 people, including nearly half of the Game Informer staff. For people who don't know what a Game Informer is, Game Informer essentially was the magazine, or still is because it's still open. That was part of GameStop, right? They had their own publication. Now, Game Informer is very interesting because Game Informer has often been seen as sort of
A show.
a trade magazine, kind of like, oh, this is just full of commercials, just one big commercial for all the games and stuff that GameStop is. I mean, but from time to time they've done some good work. Um, they quote the opening paragraph from Kotaku: the struggling retail chain GameStop laid off over 100 employees today. Both of its corporate headquarters in Grapevine, Texas, and other offices, including subsidiary Game Informer magazine, Minnesota, where nearly half of the editorial staff lost their jobs in a surprise cut. And I think that's what it was. Like, people were like, "Oh, I'm the senior editor of this. I just got fired. Like, we just
Ooh.
went to work on Tuesday morning, and we don't have a work job anymore."
Uh,
Um, and of course, as everybody knows, GameStop has been struggling for a while, and that's the thing. That's like, I mean, if you know you're gonna try to make cuts, just give people a chance. I have to give most of us have to give a 2 week notice before we quit, right?
yeah.
And you not have like the same courtesy to your employees? Come on, jeez. So yeah, it's I mean, it's a shame. I hope everybody who is at Game Informer right now can bounce back. That's my hope.
Yeah.
That's a link there, and that's a very lengthy link to the Kotaku article by Jason Schreier, who is always doing some very good work. Um, Talking about stuff, we have a couple of news. One is, and this one is Halo Infinite creative director leaves the company.
Hmm.
But also, and this was also done by PC Gamer, and I hope they gamer senior EA4 dev that leaves. There'll be a couple of announcements. According to PC Gamer, lead producer for Dragon Age also leaves BioWare. Now,
Yeah.
in a letter by Fernando Melo, who goes on Twitter by the handle Disco Babaloo, and he said that he in fact wasn't the lead designer. He wasn't the lead producer. He was one of the designers, senior designers, but not a lead producer. And everything was going according to that everything was going swimmingly, and stuff like that. There was a reaction, at least on one corner of the internet, a Tumblr, by fans of Dragon Age, that accusing PC Gamer of being carrying the pod and causing fears, unfounded fears. But a new report by Kotaku shows that we talked about, I think, before, that things are not going well in BioWare, right? Both in the Dragon Age and Mass Effect. Well, Mass Effect is dormant. I want to put it
Yeah. The
charitably.
anthem.
Yeah, via Anthem, yeah, teams. So this is somebody who has been 12 years in the business. I mean, it could be just somebody leaving, but there's been
Oh,
other people who have left
yeah.
before that. So
Actually, this week, didn't somebody who's I think the head of Anthem right now, who's been with the BioWare
Ben
for
Irvin. Yep. The
yep,
Anthem-led producer
for
Ben
8
Irvin is
years.
leaving BioWare as well.
Yeah, 8 years. It's going, and it's not like it's not one of those, which is weird because I've every time I've seen people leave from Bioware, it's like, oh, I'm taking a break from the industry and stuff. Those guys like straight off, no, I got another job at a different studio. Bye guys.
Yeah.
I totally believe in Anthem.
Yeah, yeah. But the thing, yeah, that's the thing. That's one of the things like people were like citing. Oh, well, he said everything's okay. But here's the opening. Uh, uh, After 8 amazing years of BioWare, I have made a decision to move on to accept an exciting opportunity and another gaming company, who goes unnamed, by the way. Since the first time I played Baldur's Gate many years ago, BioWare was the dream place I always wanted to work. Was okay, maybe reading a little too much into it, but hey. And Fernando Melo, which I believe might be Brazilian Portuguese, and that sounds like a Portuguese last name. Not that it's relatively important. Also said that that he had a great time and stuff like that. It's like people citing that it's like, oh, everything was okay. But here's the thing: when you leave a job and your part of your task is not to burn every damn bridge before you, that's the kind of boilerplate stuff that you say. I had a great
Mm-hmm.
time. It was a green place. I am moving on. New pastures, greener pastures. Nothing wrong here. Everything's going fine. Don't blame me. You know. And if this was just a sort of a few things that happened, people are leaving, it wouldn't be a problem. But we saw this before Anthem. We saw it with Andromeda as well. Um, BioWare is not in a very strong position, and we're not seeing BioWare hiring a lot of people. Um, I know people leave all the time in the video game industry, but still, you got to be careful with these statements. Um, there you have it. And that's well. There's one more piece from Gizmodo. It's more like they're announcing or presaging the quantum internet for those who are like myself into streaming.
Quantum Internet, huh?
Despite the fascinating quantum internet won't be some futuristic new way to navigate online, it won't produce any mind-blowing new content, at least not for decades. The quantum internet will look more or less the same as the internet you're using now, but scientists and cryptographers hope it could provide protection against not only theoretical threats, but also those that we haven't dreamt up yet. Basically, it's a new way of encrypting communications in a perfectly secure fashion that can be broken in principle. Even in the future, we develop more fundamental theory of physics. It's not necessarily faster in it. It's more like, and it's based on quantum mechanics, like subatomic particles. We do this, so quantum entanglement, that sort of thing. For people who play Mass Effect, might be familiar with the concept. So that's a thing that's happening. I thought to a little note that people might be interested in. And yeah, I don't think. Do you have any pieces of news you want to discuss before we continue? Anything
I
else
mean,
popped
like
up?
I mentioned that that Sony apparently bought out uh, Insomniac Games, which I kind of thought was interesting. That in terms of that, Insomniac Games is mostly made exclusives um, for Sony platforms, like all the way back to like Spyro the Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like what I find interesting is like, why did it take them so long to kind of do this? I don't know. I honestly I find that kind of interesting. It's like, why did it take so long?
Well, maybe they're lining their ducks in a row for 2020.
Maybe.
You know.
And usually there's only two games that I can think of off the top of my head that Insomniac Games made that weren't Sony platform exclusive, and that was Fuse, which was horribly focus tested to death
Mm.
by EA, their publisher. And then the other game was Sunset Overdrive, which I believe was an Xbox One exclusive.
Yes, it
And
was. It was sort of their version of Jet Set Radio, which did okay.
Yeah.
but it wasn't the Halo or the Mass Effect or other system killer that you
It
expect.
wasn't. It didn't become like an iconic thing
Hmm.
like their other franchises such as like Resistance,
Hmm.
Spyro, Ratchet and Clank, and of course I think their biggest one right now is of course the Spider-Man game.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like an interesting development, and especially since I don't care about the Spider-Man stuff. I care more about the Ratchet and Clank stuff. It's like, oh hey,
Yeah.
I guess now they I assume now that like it's not just Sony that owns the IP, but like they fully own the people who created it, assuming those people are still there.
Yeah, I mean, they have a studio. They might have a dedicated sort of Marvel studio, one
Hmm.
of many, right? Well, Sony doesn't do Marvel, especially now when they split over Spider-Man with Disney. But they certainly own the Spider-Man franchise, so they're like, oh, we're gonna
Yeah.
milk it. It's a great game. We can do more, right?
Hmm.
Miles, I hope they'll do a Miles Morales game. That would be cool,
Yeah.
really cool. Their movie, their Into the Spider Verse also did very well. It was a Sony
That was
Pictures.
actually good. That's one of few I heard it was on Netflix. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna actually sit down and watch it. That was actually pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty
I
good.
I, I had some issues with it, but it overall it was pretty good.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's the thing. So again, we don't have any more news, so we move into our meat of the program, which we are going to talk. We're going to fantasize about what we would make a better game that was already made, and the game that we're going to talk about it's Kingdoms of Amalur. Now, for people who don't know what Kingdoms of Amalur are, let's do a little search, a little internet search, shall we? So we can get some of the details down part. Kingdoms of Amalur. Now, Kingdoms of Amalur came out, according to Wikipedia, on
2012, 2011, I think.
yes, it says Microsoft PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and by 38 studios and Big Huge Games, or published by Electronic Arts, and it came out in February 7th, 2012. Um, that was North America, and in the EU in February 10th. And it had two DLC. Now, what's interesting about Kingdoms of Amalur was that, for example, it had a very cool. Let's look at things that we like. I liked cool story. It's good setting. Now the story was okay. You know, it wasn't a great story, but it was
Yeah, it was a bit yeah,
formulaic.
it was a bit kind of generic
Yeah,
if we're being honest. But it's everything else kind of propped the story up.
the setting was great. The way they use like Celtic mythology and the Fae and all that to sort of give the same, you know, a little bit of a twist on the just a little a reskinning of standard fantasy tropes was great. Mechanically, I love the fact that that game you could switch up weapons and like you could make almost any build. Like you could have like giant shrapnels that took on the entire screen, or bow and arrow. You can be stealthy. You can be like a big sword guy. People who like that and saying Dark Souls, this is even better because you could do it on the fly, which I think they tried to do in Andromeda, and for me, it never really worked. But it
Yeah.
worked great in Amalur because in part because you could craft your own weapons and you could experiment, and also they would show you how the weapons would work. Like, oh, you're using this technique, and they would show you, and you can try it out. Um, the graphics, I mean, I think they still hold up even today, even though they're early 360 PlayStation 3 era graphics.
Yeah,
Uh,
I played it. What was it, like a year or two ago, and
mhm.
that was on the PlayStation 3, and it was still pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it could, you know, if you do even if you try to do a HD remake, you just retouch the, you know, the graphics and
The
the
textures.
textures usually, which is what it really shows. But a very colorful, very bright world, very huge, very big world as well. You had deserts and stuff like that, but they felt there were some interesting choices, like oh, you don't have dwarves, but you have gnomes that are Roman, and they're like dwarves, but not really. And it's like, okay, that's pretty cool. And you have your elves, but you also have your, which are not really called elves, right? They're called two other races.
Hmm.
And then you have the Fae, which are kind of almost made out of dreams and plant life, literally, right? The whole idea of the fade cycle and it ending and the fate and all that. I think that was pretty cool, right? But it also has some major problems. it was, and we see this like in games like Andromeda and Inquisition and some other games. Ironically, it was too big.
Hmm.
Um, it had a mechanical problem in that it had so much content, but it also had the thing where you get to a point where you get such a high level that the enemies don't give you any XP. So you kind of get XP by doing completing missions,
Or like
but
side quests and
yeah,
stuff.
a lot of the side quests were essentially in the same cavern, right? It's basically was the same, kind of like the original Mass Effect, and like that, where you go to the same cavern and the same mine and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Getting to one of those places that was very colorful, but once you go into the place itself, it's like, oh, I've been this place before, and that was a problem.
Yeah, and of course it's always like a cavern too that conveniently loops around at the end.
Yeah,
It was just blocked off before.
yeah. So that's something about people have a complaint with Skyrim, but I think with Skyrim, the stuff that at least the stuff you do in the places, and the little bits of lore and stuff like that are for me are engaging enough that I go, yeah, this looks similar, but it's basically using the same construction kit, right, that they use, but it's just different enough that I'm willing to tolerate it. Where because of the very length of the of Kingdoms of Amalur, it just was like, oh yeah, there's like 20 openings to the sides, but especially in the final game, which is basically just one long run in this entire new continent. You just basically run through it, kill everything in your path once you reach the end, right? Before you were kind of go side, you can go here and go there, but the second half of the game is like just run to the end, just run, kill anything that moves, and run to the end. Yeah,
Yeah,
very linear.
that last part it got really boring.
Yeah, and it still had those side caverns and something like that. It's like, but I don't want to do any of that
And
because,
it's like, oh, could you help us like find some soldiers that went into the cave and never came back?
like, nope, I gotta go to the end. Bye. Just keep killing whatever it's in the middle, right? The voice acting was solid, and in fact, a lot of the voices you probably recognize from other fantasy games from BioWare, some other companies. Um, so if we are going to make a sequel, first of all, don't make it like it was planned, an MMO. The day of the MMO for the most part has passed. Don't go
Yeah,
that route. That also said, don't make it into a games as service because it's sort of the new form of MMO. Don't do that. It's a game that has a lot of things that would be in today's market would be microtransactions, like
yeah.
weapons and skins and.
Well, I mean, even the game felt very reminiscent of an MMO. I felt like, hey, it's this feels like I'm playing World of Warcraft, but
Mhm,
it's not it's even though it's a pretty big open world, it's not quite as big. It's not like the entire world,
mhm.
and it's offline. It's
Yeah,
just me, oh, go kill 10 boars. Okay.
it's a game that I think would benefit from having co-op, like two characters or more. Maybe a party of four. Uh, each one different abilities. So like one guy's made a fighter thief, and the other one made a mage fighter or whatever. It's like, oh, I'm just the guy who's a pure thing. That would be cool, right? More variety of missions. Certainly, that would be actually make the game smaller in a way. And if you're gonna expand the game, do like the DLC that you brought, because the DLC were pretty cool. At least one of them, the Teeth of Nero, I think the Teeth of Neros, which was sort of Greco-Roman thing where you kind of go and sort of talk to the gods or the
Yes.
precursors of the rate of the world, right? The time before your time. I think that was pretty cool,
Yeah,
right?
it sort of didn't it also kind of like throw into question the whole premise of like you being faithless? Like you're since you died, you have like no destiny.
Yeah, but you kind of do because you're still doing the things that Destiny called for
Yeah,
anyway,
this
right?
person says that yeah, your destiny was to do this thing and you did it. So it's like, okay.
That was interesting. I think if you can do expansions like that, that would be cool, right? Go back to the original continent and expand on the races. I think the variety, especially the different type of races. Like, why are there two types of elves, and like two or three types of humans, and what are the real differences? Because they were there, but they kind of came off generic. Like, oh,
Hmm.
this is cool. It's like, oh, it's just this guy has like a this bonus and this and that, right? I think the
Yeah,
only
like
difference were like the dark elves who were all dressed
yeah.
sluttily.
So I the issue I had with the dark elves is that they're dark elves, but they represent like death and decay, but they're not normally they're not evil. At
Mhm.
least they're possessed or something or whatever. They're being controlled, but they're not supposed to be evil. But that's the one thing I kind of took into issue with. It's like, oh, you coincidentally you took like the elves that are not supposed to be evil that usually end up representing the bad things in life or normally perceived the bad things of life like death, decay, wither, and oh, they just happen to be evil and they look all dark and sad and mopey and
Well, yeah,
evil.
there's two types of dark elves in Kingdom Hearts. They're like the player race, which are
Hmm.
they're not. I guess they're dark because they're like
They're
purple.
I guess
They're
they're like
purple
the
elves.
dark fae.
Yeah, the dark fae, which are usually the dark elves, like a drow in D&D. They kind of fill that role, even though they're not. There was some interesting stuff there, like death, decay is also part of the life cycle, so that's part of the
Yeah.
stories. That's pretty cool. But the other dark elves, part of the race that you play, for the most part, they were the sexy elves. Like
Mm.
everybody, you went to that one city where they're at, and to be fair, the men as well dressed with very little clothing. But all the women were like wearing almost anything, and the guys too, and they were like their pecs were out, and it's like they were the sexy elves, right? But it was never explained why, compared to everyone else. And by the way, if you play, one of the things about that game is if you play a male or a female, actually a female character, a male character, you can never wear like very revealing clothing. Yeah, which is interesting choice, right?
Hmm.
The armor sets and all are pretty cool, but you can't you can't have like boot plate and stuff like that. Not really. I mean, you kind of do, but not to the point where it's like as exaggerated in other. Um,
But
but they were the sexy elves, and you're like, but why are these the sexy elves other than that they're purple? You know?
yeah, and it's like I just kind of had issue that like oh the well the bright and colorful happy elves that represent life weren't necessarily good. They had like a little dark side to them too, and they mostly had this weird obsession with like what they kept role playing like history or something.
Yeah.
But like it's like oh coincidentally the elves are kind of helping you or the bright and cheery and colorful elves. It's not
Mhm.
like oh the bright and cheery colorful elves are the bad guys.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are throwing the world into chaos and raging war against everyone.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of like the missed opportunity, but I guess it would have been kind of blah if you did start off in a world where it's all dark and grim, and then you eventually like the end parts, all the bright and colorful areas that you're fighting through.
Yeah. I mean, how would fix it again? Our ideal sequel would be somewhat smaller. I would introduce a little more dynamic scaling, right? I know a lot of people complain about dynamic scaling and difficulty because it's like you're finding bandits that are level 55 and they're tougher than a gigantic boss at level 20 or something. Yeah, that happens, but you avoid the problem. And I also had a problem with Dragon Age Inquisition is like, oh, I'm level 55 and there's a lot of stuff people keep telling me, oh, you should go here and do this and do that, and
Yeah.
this is one thing. It's like, yeah, but I'm not really getting any challenge for it, or in the way that it was done in some of the DLC in Inquisition. It's like, oh, we're gonna make all the enemies spongy, bullet spongy, or
I,
hit spongy, and you're like,
I remember
okay.
I ran into like five different quests just an amount to oh go I lost my ring, could you go get it,
Mhm.
go to the place, get the ring and take it back.
Yeah, there were things that I mean in the beginning, and you kind of, and this is one of the things about Kingdom Hearts. It's like you can almost trace the development. Almost feels like they
Hmm.
developed the game in a linear fashion because in the
Yeah.
beginning they had some very interesting quests. Like there's an early quest where you have to, yeah, you have to fetch four things, but the reason why you have to do the four things is that you have to recreate a legend, so you can summon a troll to fight the troll, and then the person you're helping, you can either say, okay, you can convince them to give you the ring, and they can also go away, whatever. And it's an opening for you to join one of the factions. One of the things I really liked was the factions, but the factions, again, a lot of stuff at Kingdoms of Amalur is like it feels like they drop halfway. Like, oh, you have this interesting faction of the travelers, which are essentially the thieves and stuff like that. Okay, I'm gonna do that. Sure. And then halfway it's like, just you gotta just kill that guy who betrayed you, and that's all you gotta do. The mages, oh, you have this great evil trapped in a thing. Yeah, just a matter of just going there and killing them, and nobody else could do it. And there's a prophecy that says somebody's gonna do it, and I guess that's you, even though you're fateless, right? Okay, right. I think the biggest problem with Kingdom Island is it's so ambitious that sort of ran out of steam halfway, right? You feel like the quest lines like,
Yeah.
and that's a problem that Skyrim also has with some of the factions. Like, oh, I became the king of the mages. I'm
I
the
became
that.
I became the oh, there you go. Looks
Yeah,
like it.
the internet was a little bit, had a little bit
Yeah.
of
It's like, oh yeah, you became the headmaster of like the Harry Potter school and of Skyrim in in less than like 3 days.
yeah, and then okay, you do nothing, and people just treat you like you're just somebody. Oh, can you fetch that book? I'm like, dude, you work for me. What the hell? Well, what are you doing? Right? It's like once you're there, it's just more of the same. And that's the thing. That's the general problem with factions, right? In most games, that aside from getting a couple of bonuses, maybe a training thing here and there, joining a faction doesn't amount to much of anything. So I had that possibility of, and the factions were pretty cool, like the travelers and this. I think I would, for example, make the option of making some or all the factions, not all of them, but some of the factions mutually exclusive,
Hmm.
right? Not
Yeah.
all of them, because the idea in Kingdoms of Amalur, this is one of the strong points, is that you can be any class. So, oh, I'm a thief up to this point, but then I could actually join. Because Skyrim is very similar. I can join this school and become a mage, and take a couple of points in magic and stuff like that. Expand on the dialogue options, right? Because sometimes dialogue options came up as being the voice acting was cool, but the dialogue options were like very binary.
Hmm.
If you couldn't convince somebody something like that, then it was like I'm stuck until I get like a special potion or something to talk to this person to get what I want or something. Like okay, yeah. Um, what else? Again, make the especially the ending. Don't make, and this is a problem I think also, for example, Fallout 4 has, where because of the needs of the narrative especially becomes very linear in a more open world scenario, right? I think the game would benefit from a more like today would be considered more traditional open map rather than a more hub-based system that they had, and it makes sense because of memory allocations, right? Um, because most of the maps they were sort of open world, but really they were open air dungeons because you had very defined paths you could take, except when you swam, right? Oh, another thing, give the character or characters a jump button. Because there's something about Kingdoms of Amalur people don't remember is that, and this was typical of the games that came at or before it, but by the time it came out, it was becoming outdated. You could only jump in certain places.
Yeah.
Like there were ramps that you could jump to, right? And like, oh,
Or like little ledges that like,
yeah,
oh, a cliffside I can just hop down to the area below me, but only in this one particular ledge.
give the characters a jump on. And this is also something that could be implemented in Kingdoms of Amalur, but I would like to see in other areas. If you're gonna have a thief character, give them a not only jump button, but also give them a climb skill.
Hmm.
Because if you really want to use like a sniper kind of character, remake those maps so that hey, your mage might blast a rock and drop rocks on some people, something like that, right? Like it could be a QTA or something like that. But hey, your rogue can climb, to this high area and snipe from there, right? Uh, it's difficult to implement. I've seen it a little bit done in Dark Souls and some other games, and not consistently. But I would love to see that. Hey, give your characters the ability to climb stuff, right? And aside of games that are parkour, right? Or you can only climb
Yeah.
here with the ropes and stuff like that. Like really, you know, treat quests more like puzzles to be solved rather than just items to be sort of ticked up. What else do you think you would have improved? Romances? You think romances would have improved the Kingdoms of
Not
Amalur?
not necessarily. I don't think every game needs romances. I feel if you would add romances to Kingdoms of Amalur, like if Kingdoms of had romances, if they included that, I feel like they would end up being romances like in Fables, like oh, some random NPC you impressed, and then oh, you can have hey, let's get married, okay, and here's our house, and that's it. Like nothing comes of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like the romance options were pretty limited. They were very like small companions, unless they're all going to be just story based companions. It wouldn't be like random NPCs. Like the only people that come to mind would be like that the elf lady. I can't
Hmm.
remember her name.
Yeah.
And of course, wasn't there? It's sort of implied like, ooh, maybe you did have a thing together, maybe not,
Yeah,
kind of
and
thing.
it's the way she talks about you and the way she dresses. Is one of the few characters actually dresses like she's basically wearing almost nothing. Is that no matter if you're male or female, the way she talks about it is like you had a high level intimacy,
Hmm.
not necessarily romantic or sexual, but it's up in the air. It's like, oh, my beloved and my
Yeah.
love and stuff like that. It's
It's
like,
like maybe were we really close friends, lovers,
yeah,
married? I don't know. And it's like the only other person I can think of is maybe like the one prophet guy, like
the
the
Fate Weaver, yeah.
yeah, the faith weaver guy, and maybe your creator,
Hmm.
or the little gnome guy who created you. Like
Ex-
that'd be interesting.
that's another thing with the Fate Weavers, because the mechanic of changing classes is basically changing your fate, and so the Fate Weavers are the ones that can allow you to retrain and stuff like that. I would like to see a big expansion of the Fate Weavers, right? Because
Hmm.
they're there
Yeah,
and
because
there's one
they're
character, but aside from that one character, it's like, maybe this one other character shows up and that's it, right?
yeah, there's I think that aren't there like a couple of faith weavers? They're just like NPCs that can,
Yeah,
oh yeah, you want to respect here, I'll
yeah.
respect you, kind of thing. But that's actually kind of interesting because he brought up the fact that it's like, oh yeah, we're important because we can read people's faith, but we're pretty unpopular because we can read people's faith.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, our world runs on like predestination and stuff, and we can see the predestination, and people hate us for that for some reason. Even though they come to ask us what their predestination, they hate us because they asked us and we told them.
Well, they don't like the answers, right? And I think the
Yeah.
the one that you're with, his particular gift was that he could see when and how you died,
Hmm.
how you would die, right? In fact, he one of the twists in the story is that he and shows that you're a fatalist, right? Is that he was supposed to die in one
Yeah,
particular
he
fight.
he actually tried to avoid it because like, no, I don't really want to help you because I saw my death. You were there. You like I end up dying because I go out and helping you. So it's
Mhm.
like I don't want to, but eventually he regrets. He kind of like, okay, well, whatever. I guess I can't avoid it. And then, of course, surprise, he doesn't end up dying. He's like, wait, what? No, this just pretty much throws everything I know into, and like the laws of this world into like turmoil.
I mean, I could see, for example, storyline and we like some fate weavers are, I guess, fate breakers, right? They embrace the fact that you broke the chains of fate and everybody's supposed to be free of it. But you might have other fate weavers who want to sort of reinstate the
Yeah,
chains of fate, right? And there's also hints. The bad guy in the end, I'm not gonna give who the bad guy is, but the bad guy is somebody that exists outside of reality, sort of as a Cthulhian kind of thing going on. And I would like to see more of that. Like, oh, the real baddies are. It turns out that the fate is these outside forces attempting to control the world, and when they exercise this sort of this metaphysical control of the world, they change it, right? Like, you could have a situation expansion where you have like, oh, you know, what happens if if fate is literally the bonds of the world and you change it, how would the world will look like? Could you return back to the Greek Greco-Roman thing in the past and have everybody who had high magic technology kind of thing? Or would you have like, could you transform entire species, like the gnomes start becoming giants or something, right? Because
or
there's the thing about the gods
does
creating the world kind of thing, but you don't really you know
yeah, or the does the world just kind of like it like it's still the loss of like predestination change, or like they're still in place but they just rewrite themselves
yeah.
because to make up to kind of compensate for the fact that this person has no destiny is tampering just by his very existence.
Hmm. I think that would have been a cool thing that should be continued, right? Because that was the core of it, right? Decide your own destiny, I would not have every character die and then come
Yeah.
back to life. That I think would be kind of dumb.
Well, not every character die. It would be like, well, that's the thing. It's like, so would a sequel have the same character, the same pre-made character, or like a character created character, or would you play as someone else?
I think you would play with someone else, right? Because that's it. The idea at the end is that fate has been broken for all of them, right?
Mhm.
So maybe you have different backgrounds, and there was a hint about different backgrounds. You could be, I don't know, a member of the deathless, right? People who were brought back to life, repercussions of the machines that we're using to bring back people back to life. You could be one of the fate weavers, right? You could be one of those. So instead of having just the races, have the races also be background elements as well. Like they have their own schools. Like the purple elves are into magic. So hey, they know about these supernatural creatures that are beyond the ken of men, and they're guardians of this. So that's what you're supposed to do, right? That's where you're coming from. You have a mission. I mean, you could squeeze a couple of things in those backgrounds, right? And mix and match with races and stuff like that. And it's like, do you follow your destiny? Do you break it? Do you abandon your faction and go some other faction? But it's not necessarily that people have to die, right? That was the conceit of the first character, which was pretty cool, but it's not necessary for. It
Yeah.
could be a character background that you're creating. A new character background could be one of those, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that, right? Uh, Now, question: should it be follow immediately after the events of the first game? Would you do a time skip, like Fable 2, where they move 500 years or something like that? Would you go with the past or present? Would you just, in the form of a spiritual successor, would you, because this is the direct successor, but as a spiritual successor, would you try to recreate the original game in a
Hmm.
way, but just make it better, but
Oh,
not
I think you would have
quite?
to keep elements of like the combat and stuff in
Yeah,
place,
yeah,
or at least
definitely.
or certain elements like the being able to change your class
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
the what was it, that like faith ability where you're sort of like your little overdrive ability where you can just like poo 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 and then action.
Oh yeah, that was pretty cool. That's a pretty cool use of QTEs, right? You could just sort of
Yeah.
overpower and just have this cool a animation. I think that would be great. And so those elements must be kept. Crafting, I think crafting should be kept, but with a modern concession of not having to carry like every piece of crafting material
Yeah,
right with
the
you.
issue I had with the crafting is finding the right thing that you wanted.
Yeah, it
And
took you a
and
while.
yeah, and or you would have to farm it somehow, and I didn't like that. I
There's
like the
go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of crafting and making my own armor to kind of fit with whatever skills I'm trying to go with, but it's finding the pieces that was hard. That was very, very MMORPG.
Yeah. So you carry a lot of crap with you, take backspace, and you're like, I guess I gotta sell it, and you know have nothing to do with the money. There's also the game has like Skyrim, it has homes. Would you also go into the crafting of homes, right? Like a little real estate mini game, or would you take it even further, a la Fallout 4, and say I can literally make my own home, my own communities, and
My own little base.
yeah, I mean that's interesting, but I would start small and then kind of do like they did in Skyrim, add a DLC that said, "Oh, this is a craftable house, and you can maybe craft your own community and stuff like that," but not be the focus of the game, but rather an extra. I think that would be pretty cool because a
Hmm.
lot of people's like, "Well, I don't want to play Minecraft. I just want to kill like wolves and stuff." More enemy variety also be pretty cool, right? Because at the end, they basically were fighting the same enemies, but they were like they had these kyber crystal, red crystal things. So it was like, oh, it's
Yeah,
the super
they
powered wolf and the super powered troll, and it's like
yeah, you jump like you see the same repetitive giant troll thing that you fought like, well,
gazillion
30
times, yeah,
months ago.
yeah. And I would have the game be smaller, maybe in a similar sort of situation with the first continent, and then through DLCs you would expand other places on the world, right? Like, oh, you can go to this new area and do this and do that. I think that would be pretty cool, which is something we've seen in stuff like Skyrim and other games, Fallout 4 and some others. It's perfectly doable, but definitely no microtransactions. No, let's not do that. co-op
Mhm.
competitive multiplayer. You think that would be a cool thing, like having a I think there was a bit of an arena thing, training thing
Yeah.
in that
The
game.
that was the I guess that's technically the third DLC. It was that gated DLC to try to get people to buy the game
Hmm.
new.
Yeah, but have that, you could have that as a sort of a training arena, and if you have
Yeah.
factions, you could have like competitive uh, a multiplayer scene where the factions give you missions in that competitive multiplayer, and so you do your mission, and some other people try to stop you, and they're doing their missions and stuff like that.
Or
That
yeah,
would be pretty cool.
you could have, or just like, hey, let's just PvP and fight against each other just for fun,
Yeah,
kind of
an
thing.
arena kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I mean, it would not, of course, we're talking about spiritual successor. So clearly, unless THQ Nordic actually makes a sequel or remakes the original game, whoever tackles it has to kind of file off some of the numbers, right?
Hmm.
You know, they have to make it colorful without looking like the original game. It have similar races, but it can't be the same races. The good thing about Kingdoms of Amalur is that because it's a lot of it is classic D&D style, and even the author was I think it was R.A. Salvatore, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and he's known for writing Dungeons and Dragons novels. That you could, you could say, oh, well, my game is not Kingdoms of Amalur because it has dwarves instead of gnomes, right? Like my game is not D&D because it's gnomes instead of dwarves, right? And the elves are called something else, right? So yeah, it's not that hard. Uh, so that would be, and then in things like Fate, I don't think anybody has trademarked the term Fate as a game mechanic yet.
Yeah.
So you can't trade game mechanics, uh, copyright or trademark game mechanics yet. So there's
Mm.
that. So yeah, I think Kingdoms of Amalur is very much ripe for and I also like the idea of a spiritual successor because sometimes games should be seen what they are and laid to rest, right? And a spiritual successor is like, yeah, we're gonna take the good ideas and improve on that, but we're gonna make our own thing. And sometimes that's a much better way to go. I think that's my opinion.
Yeah. Um, Maybe the only other thing I would have to like add to it's just I don't know. I can't think of anything really much more to add. The only other thing is like what would be like the big climactic thing would be what to try to like what would be the goal or the antagonist?
I think it would have to be like in the first game, some kind of entity beyond space and time that is trying to invade and perhaps rewrite fate, right? Like in the
Hmm.
original, right? And you're trying to defeat them, right, or stop them. You can even include a situation where you co-opt them. There's a Dragon's Dogma. The real enemy is again a creature of fate. Like there's a dragon, which has not the fate of the dragon. That's what happens in this Amalur, and eventually you sort of become God. And that's a major spoiler for a 8-year old game. I think 2014. I came 2012. I think so 6 years. Uh, but you could do something similar in that you could say, oh, you're trying to change fate. Well, I'm the fateless, so I'm the man without fate or the creature without fate. So I'm gonna decide that you have no power, or you are gonna be tied by the strings of fate, and I'm gonna play with you, and I'm gonna remake. You can. That's the thing. Because we're talking about fate, you could have different endings where essentially you could remake the world, right?
Hmm.
And then that would be a cool game plus situation. New game plus where you make a new character, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is a new world which I just recreated. With just basically checking some check boxes, not to be. You don't really have to, go into game program design mode and put things here and there, but you can
Yeah.
say like, oh, in this version of the world, this race doesn't exist, or this race is different, and you just have a checklist of stuff, and then playing that game, the new fate list, and then essentially you're fighting yourself, and it'll be like an endless cycle where you're fighting yourself and deciding literally the fate of the world by either keeping it, trying to restore it, or changing it. And that's a pretty cool idea. I mean, it's not a unique idea fighting the old hero kind of thing. That's not new, but usually just ends like that. You defeat them and that's it. But the idea of
If
able to actually remake
actually
the
that
world,
would be if if like the twist is that you're fighting yourself because it'd be a paradox like you out to save the world end up creating a situation that causes you to go out to go save the world and it turns out to you end up being the bad guy trying to rewrite the world by saving it kind
yeah,
of thing. I don't know, that'd be something like to iron out the details about how that would work.
I would make it. I mean, I would have like slight variations or maybe like I have a checklist, right? Oh, you're presented with this, and essentially, what would you like to change? Like series of questions and stuff like that. It's like, oh, this tragedy happened, this war happened. This is like, oh well, then this is gonna happen. In this story, this is what happened. You did make these choices. Are you gonna change them? Oh, I'll make sure that this doesn't happen in the history of the world. Because part of the journey would be uncovering the history of the world, how you got here, right? So it's like, oh well, then now I have the power of creation, so I'm gonna make sure that this war doesn't happen, or this doesn't work this way. And you could have a couple of variations, and you add DLC, you can have even more variations. I mean, now that would be a game that, in theory, outside of getting tired of essentially fighting yourself, you would never end, sort of. Because if you
Yeah.
add more DLC and the DLC have more options because the player has more knowledge, right? As they play the game, they unlock more stuff, then they can check different things, little things, big things, right? I don't
Hmm.
know, make it something like six list of six or five or six, not a big list, like maybe two or three lists, and one of them has 3 to 5 choices, and that's it. You know, make a place. It could be as simple as like, oh, this place is very dark. Oh, and that's one final thing. Give the game a day night cycle. Because the
Yeah.
game didn't have that. You could
Yeah, it was.
sleep, but there was no day night cycle. And in game that is, oh, you can sleep for 24 hours, that doesn't have a day night cycle. It's like kind of weird. It's like it's always daylight out there. What's going on here,
Yeah,
right?
it's always daylight in the happy, colorful area, and it's always dark in the dark area.
Yeah, so that's the thing. But yeah, that now that is a great idea. Implementing it, I think it's doable,
It
but
is.
it is complex, right? I think you can do it by having unlockables. Like the first time you play, you essentially, ironically, play the game as is, right? So
Hmm.
that the game doesn't break. And then as you do things, you do quests, side main quests, and especially side quests. You unlock these boxes essentially. Hell, it could literally be like little boxes of fate, like the power of
Hmm.
fate. And as you unlock them, when you finally finish the game, you have these options. And that way, the game doesn't break because you're not doing anything outside of turn. That actually could
Hmm.
work. Okay, video game companies, I know you're not watching this. I'm gonna put this on YouTube when I'm done, this week. Get on it. That's actually a great idea, and I don't know how to do it, so you do it. Okay? That's an awesome idea. You want to make a game as service? Well, it's a multiplayer kind of thing, but kind of a game that lasts forever. There you go. Outside of modding, of course, which is what most modders do, anyways. There you go. That's it. That's spiritual successor for Kingdoms of Amalur in about half an hour or so.
Yep.
So, Chapamon, where can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at Chopamon pretty much everywhere. I am Chopamon underscore Aragon on Twitch and Twitter, but I mostly hang out on YouTube on just under Chopamon.
And of course, you can find me here at the Lessons Learned channel on the Lessons Learned, Lessons Learned 1. Also on YouTube on the Lessons Learned. We are still hacking away at Dark Souls 3. Bit exasperated, but trying hard to just finish the game. Thank you, Kelly, once again for the follow. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will probably continue more discussions as the summer draws on. Usually in the fall, we start having actual news to speak about again, like new games and stuff like that. So if you have ideas, we also have a Discord. Just drop by the chat and ask to join the Discord, and I'll drop the link in below. So thank you, everybody, for coming, and we'll see you when we see you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.